ADRIANA LECOUVREUR by Francesco Cilea. The synopsis is presented by Opera Inside, the online opera guide. The roles: Adriana Lecouvreur, actress at the Comédie Française. Maurizio, Count of Saxony. Principe, Prince of Bouillon. Principessa, Princess of Bouillon. Michoni, director at the Comédie Française. Abati, Abbé and aide of the prince. Duclos, actress at the Comédie Française. On a theatre stage of the Comédie Française, the actors are in hectic preparation for an evening performance. The evening's female lead actors are the Duclos and Adriana Lecouvreur. Michoni, the stage director of the house, is busy making the final arrangements. He is secretly in love with Adriana Lecouvreur. She does not know about it. The Prince of Bouillon, a patron of the theatre and secret lover of the Duclos, appears in the company of his aide, the Abbé. The two of them gallantly flirt with the ladies on stage. Adriana appears. She rejects the flattery and declares herself to be merely the humble servant to the creative genius. In a short break, Michoni plucks up his courage and wants to confess his love to Adriana, whom he has loved for 5 years. He tells her about a recent inheritance and marriage plans. When he wants to confess his love to her, Adriana tells him, in secrecy, that she also is in love. It's Maurizio, an ensign of the Count of Saxony. She doesn't know that Maurizio is in fact the Count himself. Maurizio was wounded, and she heard he is now in town. At that moment, Maurizio appears. He confesses his love to her. Adriana wants to help him and ask the prince for his promotion. But Maurizio doesn't want that and promises to wait for her at the stage exit after the performance. Adriana gives him a bouquet of violets as a pledge. The Abbé and the prince appear. The Abbé holds a letter from the Duclos in his hand, which he intercepted. The Prince of Bouillon is jealous and wants to know what the letter says. It is an invitation to a man to a meeting of a highly political matter at her home. What he does not know is that the Duclos wrote the letter on behalf of his wife, the Princess of Bouillon. The recipient is the Count of Saxony, who is staying in a box that evening. The prince sees politics only as a pretext and wants to blow up the alleged rendezvous by announcing a party for the actors after the performance. Michoni has to give a letter to an actress as a prop, but he can't find it. Then Maurizio appears with a letter from the Duclos in his hand. He wants to tell Adriana that he has to leave the theatre and that he can't see her tonight. Meanwhile, the play has started, and he has the idea to give the letter to Michoni as a prop, and so Adriana as the recipient would receive the information in this way. Maurizio leaves the theatre and does not learn that Adriana is agitated when she receives the letter. At the Duclos mansion, the Princess of Bouillon awaits the Count of Saxony. She is excited. Maurizio was an admirer of the princess, and she lobbied for him at the king's court. She warns him that influential circles want to see him in prison, and recommends him to leave Paris. She sees the violets on his lapel and is jealous. He pretends they are for her. She resignedly realizes that Maurizio's heart belongs to another, and wants to know her name. Despite her insistence, Maurizio refuses to give her name. At this very moment they hear a carriage. Panic seizes the princess when she realizes that it is her husband and she hides in a side room. Maurizio receives the prince, who thinks he has caught him in the act. But he doesn't want to have anything to do with the Duclos anymore and leaves her to the Count, who now realizes the mix-up. Now Adriana arrives as well, who has arranged a meeting with the prince to ask for support for Maurizio. The prince introduces Adriana to the Count of Saxony and Adriana recognizes who Maurizio really is. With a wink, the two recognize the masquerade and renew their vowed love. Michoni shows up. He wanted to see the Duclos to discuss the next play with her and goes into the next room. He meets a lady in the dark, whom he doesn't recognize. Maurizio has to leave the house, and asks Adriana at all costs to prevent anyone from finding out who the lady in the next room is. He swears to her that the whole thing is purely political. Adriana opens the door and in the dark she gives the stranger a key that leads to the garden. In an exchange of words, The women learn from each other that they are in love with the Count of Saxony. A heated dialogue develops, which is suddenly interrupted when the prince shows up. The princess manages to flee unrecognized and Adriana drops into an armchair, stricken with grief. Michonne appears and shows her a red bracelet which he has found on the ground. In the Prince of Bouillon's palace, the preparations for the dinner are underway. Meanwhile, the princess has returned and is pondering revenge on her mysterious rival. She notices a powder compact. The prince takes it away from her because it is a piece of evidence which he has to analyze as a chemist. It is a highly poisonous substance. The princess is struck by a sudden inspiration of poisoning her rival with it. The party has started and Adriana appears. She is introduced to the princess. Appalled, the princess recognizes the voice. To test her, she invents the story that Maurizio was wounded in a duel. When Adriana feels a sudden faintness, the princess is sure that Adriana is her rival. Maurizio appears. He was arrested and released. He thanks the princess because he thinks the release was thanks to her. He has to tell the evening society about one of his heroic deeds from the war. Dancers appear and show a pastoral dance. During the ballet, the princess and Adriana exchange words. Through the mutual unveiling of the violet bouquet and the bracelet, the two recognize each other as rivals. Adriana is asked to recite after the ballet. She chooses a piece whose last verse is about adultery, and she openly addresses the princess, who swears revenge. Weeks later in Adriana's house, she gave up the theater when Maurizio was arrested. She is consumed with pain and jealousy. Michonne goes to see her at her home and asks her to return to the theater. He gives Adriana back the necklace she pawned to free Maurizio from the dungeon. He doesn't tell her that he's put his inheritance to work. The maid delivers a letter from Maurizio. In the package are the dried violets. Deeply affected, Adriana feels mocked and abandoned. At this moment, Maurizio appears. Michonne has written to him. He begs Adriana for forgiveness and for her love. Adriana doesn't believe Maurizio, but when he proposes, the dams break. Suddenly, Adriana shakes. Her face pales. She tells him about the violets. Michonne recognizes them and realizes that they have been poisoned and sent by the princess. The poison works quickly and Adriana begins to fantasize. She finally dies in the arms of Maurizio.
www.operaInside.com. All about operas. Learn more about this great opera. With interesting facts and great YouTube videos. Visit us.